Hello everyone and welcome back to the Havana tournament of 1965, which is basically the Capablanca Memorial Tournament, the 4th edition, and here we have a wonderful game from round 10. Karl Robatsch, who I'm sure you guys know very well, he contributed a lot to modern theory, and well, the Robatsch opening is being used quite a lot today in online chess in faster time formats. Some people even play it in classical, but I mean, I'm pretty sure you've seen Magnus Carlsen employ it in pretty much all the time formats, maybe except classical. G6 bishop to G7 is the idea, and I thought it'd be funny if Fischer actually employed this against him, but as Karl opened with D4, Fischer played the Sicilian here, as he does in every game. But yeah, he's a very strong grandmaster. He was already grandmaster for 4 years at the time this game was played. He got his title in 1961, and the reason it's probably called the Robatsch, I'm not sure, but he did employ it against a former world champion, against Max Euwe in the Varna Olympiad of 1962. And okay, the game didn't start E4 G6. The game actually started D4 G6, pawn to E4 and bishop to G7 with some C5 ideas, and D5, and in the end the game ended in a draw. So drawing a former world champion at the strength of Max Euwe really was a big shock, especially when such an odd opening was employed. But yeah, just thought you guys would enjoy that. Now let's check out this very nice game. If you haven't seen the previous game from this tournament, as I am covering all of the nicer ones, at least check out Fischer's game against former world champion Vasily Smyslov from round 2. It is a spectacular game. First link in the description below. Even watch it before watching this game. Now that being said, let's check out what Karl Robatsch prepared for Bobby Fischer. So pawn to E4, and Fischer replies with pawn to C5. And for those of you who haven't started following the tournament from the beginning, Fischer is not actually in Cuba, Havana. He's actually using a telex machine to play this tournament, from long distance. So okay, pawn to C5. We have knight F3, D6, and D4, challenging Fischer to an open Sicilian. So captures. Knight F6, knight to C3, and of course pawn to A6. As usual, Fischer employs the Najdorf Sicilian. Bishop to C4, going for the Lipnitsky attack, and E6, transposing into the Sozin attack, or later to be known as the Fischer-Sozin attack. A3, we have bishop to E7, and now bishop back to A2. We have castles by both players, and now castles, and now pawn to B5. We have pawn to F4, all pretty standard stuff. Fischer, of course, wants to fianchetto his light square bishop, and the white will try to create some sort of a breakthrough in the center. So bishop to B7 and the immediate pawn to F5. Fischer plays pawn to E5 and knight D to E2. We have knight B to D7 and now knight to G3. So the pawn is nicely defended. Rook to C8, all very standard moves, and bishop to E3. Fischer goes knight to B6, and here comes the first move that you would not see played today, as theory has advanced a bit further than this. And even though it was known back then, maybe players just were okay playing offbeat lines. Okay, it's not even an offbeat line, but today no one plays bishop captures on B6, simply because the engine says don't do that. The engine says wait for the knight to land on C4 and give up the light square bishop for that knight. So that's what we know, and we don't argue with the engines. But in those days, bishop captures on B6 was played. We have queen captures, and now king to H1 as the queen delivered check. Queen to E3. You can see how Fischer already controls quite a lot of the board. The queen here on E3 is an absolute monster, controlling pretty much the entire board. And there are a few modern games that reach this position, actually, where rook to F3 was played. But here we have knight to D5, and it is now, as of move 17, that we have a completely new game. So what did Karl Robatsch had in mind when he allowed this infiltration of the queen? Well, bishop captures on D5. Fischer says, all right, my light square bishop isn't going to be much of a star, so let's just trade it. Bishop captures on D5, and now bishop to D8. The bishop on E7 is also pretty dead, so you want to shift it over to this diagonal. Pawn to A4. Now Robatsch is making his plans clear. He wants to capture here and use the A file for his rook. The rook is coming to A6 or to A7, probably to A6 to put pressure on the D6 pawn. So bishop to B6 by Fischer, and now we have A captures on B5, A captures, and now rook to A6, attacking the bishop, and now pawn to B4. So you don't have to worry about pawn to C4. d4, well, you could attack the queen. Queen to d4, for example, is perfectly fine. You don't have to worry. The queen is guarding the bishop, and even if you trade it, this is better for Fischer. So instead, after b4, we have knight to h5. This is the second phase of the plan. Robatsch first put the rook on a6. It's a very nice piece, controls the 6th rank, and also puts pressure on d6. And now he also wants to activate his queen. And Fischer says, nope, knight captures on d5. Here you should play e captures on d5. The problem, or rather the idea why Karl didn't play it, is that after you capture, Fischer will play rook to c4, and he will stop queen to g4. So he tried winning a very important tempo against Fischer. He played queen to g4 right away, which, okay, you're threatening checkmate, you're going to capture the knight on the next move, but it's not as simple, because Fischer played g6, e captures on d5, and now rook captures on c2. So Fischer wins a pawn, and if you're not absolutely sure that you can allow this, you're just going to be down a pawn against Bobby Fischer, which is, you know, that's hell. So f captures on g6 and h captures on g6, of course, taking towards the center. But not only that, f captures on g6 just terribly loses tactically. I mean, you're just getting checkmated here. There's absolutely nothing you can do. So instead, after f captures on g6, h captures, and now knight to f6 with check, king to g7, and knight to h5 check. Now hoping to get a perpetual if Fischer repeats king to g8, knight f6, but of course Fischer will not give a draw so easily. So king to h6, knight to f6, and now rook to f2. And this is a very, very important move. Rook to f2 stops checkmate. The threat, of course, is queen to h4 check, king to g7, and queen to h7 checkmate, as the rook guards the knight on f6. But now, by interposing rook to f2, now the knight is no longer guarded. So queen to h4 check, king g7, and then the knight is hanging. So you can't go for that. Rook a back to a1 was played, and now comes rook to a8. A very tricky move by Fischer. The idea being, of course, that if rook captures, then rook captures on f1 is mate in 1. And you just have to move the rook. You have to play rook a to d1 and hope for the best. But in the game, queen captures on b4 was played. Karl said, all right, I'll take this opportunity to grab back the extra pawn that I lost earlier. So hopefully I don't, just lose the game terribly. But the game is now completely winning for Fischer, but you have to find a very, very tricky move. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this wild move while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always looking on how to improve your position, even by moving your weakest piece. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is king to g7. I was only joking about king being the weakest piece. As you trade off more and more pieces from the board, the king becomes the most powerful piece on the board. So he's merely waiting. His power, grows exponentially the more you trade down. But king to g7 now traps the knight. I mean, it's absolutely incredible that you cannot save the knight here, and it's very simple why. Obviously you can go to g4 and you can go to d7, but look at this. If knight to d7, then look at this amazing checkmate. Queen to e2 now, of course, threatens the rook, or queen captures, and once you move the rook, now just rook captures on a1, and that's it. There's no defense against checkmate. You could capture, you don't have to capture, doesn't really matter. If you capture, we can just give up the queen and then checkmate the white king this way. And also, if you try to save the knight via knight to g4, looks kind of nice, as you're also forking the queen and the rook. Queen f4 again threatens rook captures on f1. You cannot capture because then rook captures on a1, and that's pretty much it. And if you play queen captures on f4, then rook captures on f4. Again, there is no saving the knight. You cannot capture either rook. If you capture this, then it's checkmate. If you capture this, then this is checkmate. And of course, if you defend the knight, then pawn to f5 chases away the knight, and after knight to h2, rook captures on a1, rook captures, and now rook to f2. Okay, white does not get checkmated, but the endgame is completely winning. There's really no good way to do anything about it. If pawn to b4, you can even play pawn to e4, prevent the knight from entering the game, and that's pretty much it. It's a completely winning endgame for black. So okay, you will have to work for your meal a little bit, but of course he knows that he can't do this. So queen captures on d6 was played, and now Fischer just finishes it off with a nice queen to e2. And again, you can't move the rook. If you move the rook, then rook captures on a1. We already discussed that. Queen to f1 check runs into a beautiful checkmate. So knight to e8 check was played, trying at least something to survive. But Fischer just said thank you for the free knight. Rook captures on e8. We have rook f to e1 attacking the queen, and Fischer just played queen to g4, and he was in this position on move 33 that Karl Robatsch resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Checkmate is being threatened. Queen captures and g2 will be checkmate. If you advance the pawn, of course, it's just queen to f3 checkmate, followed by queen to g2 checkmate. And if you defend with rook to g1, doesn't really matter. You can play pretty much anything. Let's say bishop to d4, and once you play something, let's say b4, you could even offer a rook. Doesn't really matter. Just a rook to h8. Black will completely ignore you whatever you play because it's mating to whatever white plays. And now, let's say b5, you will simply sacrifice, and after captures deliver a nice queen to h4 checkmate. So really a funny game where you can see just how important, not modern opening theory, but just that we've advanced a bit further in the opening theory, where you don't just capture on b6. After knight to b6, you can't just play this. First off, it gives the black queen too much power, and the black's moves just come very naturally. And you can see white even achieved everything. White was able to open up the a file. He was able to create a blockade on d5, so he prevented Fischer from executing d5. We often say that if you execute d5 in the Sicilian, you will be okay. And here, Karl even stopped that. He opened up the a file. He was able to trade down here. But it simply wasn't enough. That opponent c2 was too much, and Fischer was able to nurture his advantage to a full point in this game. Fischer doing extremely well in the tournament. We'll see what happens in the rest of it. And like I said, if you haven't seen Fischer versus Smyslov from this tournament in round 2, first link in the description below. It is a positional masterpiece. You guys will have a better day after checking out that one. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Frederick Kasdan, Christoph Mark, the animated chemist, Mr. Anonymous, and Old Games Are Best for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.